And we're going to move forward now. In a few minutes, we'll be speaking with Ross Johnstone. He's the Director of Youth Education from Out in Schools. But wanted to give you a bit more background on Out in Schools work and its impact of reaching more than 20,000 students with their outreach work in the school system. And I would like to present you with some stories from youth before we go to that interview, just to give our listeners a bit more, to give you some more insight into the impact of education when we're talking about lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgendered students' lives in the schools and the persecution that young people face. All types of bullying, but this is a particularly egregious form of bullying that costs children their lives every year here in British Columbia. And let's go to some of these stories, and then we'll come back into the studio.
You know, one kid told me today that he sat on a schools workshop and realized that he wasn't the only gay person in his school, and probably not the only gay person on the planet. He told me that he started Wikipediaing information and was able to find other resources, and that was really cool.
It's such a good program because media is what affects youth and teenagers and high school students, so I just think it's the best program for this.
This generation is so filled with technology and images, and part of what creates stereotypes is those images that we see every day. So using the same medium to counteract those images is great, and it's a lot more intriguing than listening to someone going wah, 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 wah. If you're watching it, you can kind of, I don't know, interact with it more.
We're drawn into technology, which is good and bad all at the same time. So rather than having the person speak, it draws people's attention a lot quicker. Because I know for myself, when I'm at any place and the person's just talking, you know, probably within 2 minutes I'm like daydreaming. So it keeps people actively listening.
Film and media is definitely valuable because everyone's spending so much time on computers and in front of the television and radio, and it's just surrounding us. It's just become such a big part of our culture that that's really a good way of getting knowledge out.
And that's just a few excerpts from Out in Schools and the voices of youth that are affected and working on these issues. And we have with us Ross Johnstone, Director of Education for Out in Schools, and it's an organization that uses film to educate students about homophobia, racism, and other forms of oppression. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's we just had the chance to listen firsthand to some of these, firsthand to some digital audio recordings of the youth, and just give our listeners a little bit of background on how did Out in Schools start, because I understand it actually came out of the film festival in Vancouver, and then it became more of a force of its own.
Yeah, pretty much. In essence, Out on Screen is the umbrella organization that runs Out in Schools, and Out on Screen has been working for 24 years in Vancouver, in Vancouver's LGBT community, and our program we're most known for is the annual Vancouver Queer Film Festival that happens each August. And Out in Schools basically developed out of a concept that we had, wherein we knew we had some really terrific educational, age-appropriate films to reach some of the younger audience members, so the sort of in and around 18 or below, but we just weren't having really that kind of attendance from those audience members at our festival, and we knew that film was a really powerful tool to reach people, and particularly to reach the LGBT community, where we don't really get an opportunity to see our own stories played out, you know, at the big mega cineplexes out in the suburbs or even here in the city center. And so we decided to try taking some of these films that we knew would reach young audiences out to the schools, and you know, before we knew it, we really had something there, and Out in Schools was born essentially.
Yeah, because it's hard to imagine, you know, the Lower Mainland or southwestern BC being such a large geographic area, and thinking that out students, students who are comfortable being, being publicly out with their sexuality and traveling to downtown, going to a film festival screening, when in fact there's so many kids who wouldn't necessarily A, make that trip, or B, be out in their schools or out in their communities. So it's probably a really powerful way to actually get kind of a guerrilla way of getting that material out towards the kids where they are.
Well, absolutely, and there's a couple of things there too. Even I think for some young people, the intimidation factor of sort of going out to their very first LGBT-related event is a big step.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's all those other young people who can't get on a SkyTrain after school and go to the local drop-in that live in areas like Prince George or Prince Rupert or Kelowna even, some of the smaller centers where those resources just aren't available. So we decided that by going out to the school system, we're not just representing their voices for LGBT people. We're there to reach all students. So there's, of course, the students who might be questioning their sexual orientation or might be having issues with their sexuality, and when you're a teenager, that's when that contemplation happens or starts to happen. But there's, of course, all the other students, the straight identified students who essentially we see as if they're not already allies, as potential allies, and those students are not getting really aren't getting information about their GLBT peers in the curriculum right now. In BC, there is no mandatory curriculum when it comes to LGBT issues. So for all those reasons, and for the fact that films are fun and engaging and an opportunity to really start a strong dialogue, that's why Out in Schools was born, and that's why we've been successful since 2004 at reaching students across BC.
A couple things that come to mind for me. One is that you probably have helpers because you're talking about getting out into the schools. So I'm curious about the role of teachers in the BCTF and things like that, because you talk about it's not a mandatory part of the curriculum.
Right.
But the other thing that you're raising is also the issue that this is a battleground. There is a lot of pressure on conforming to a straight worldview, and we see it everything from kids growing up with Disney, Walt Disney, and the very gendered way that our families are supposed to be structured, and the way our relationships are supposed to be structured, and our lives are supposed to be structured. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a real war on in the schools that kids are struggling with. So what's the utility, I guess, of the out in schools work, and maybe just describe that battleground and who your friends are in terms of the program getting out into the schools.
Sure, great points. So absolutely, yes, we're in a funny world where so the pendulum swings back and forth. I find in my own life, even with my nieces and nephews, dealing with, as you mentioned, the Disney issue. The princess, everything being pink for girls and blue for boys is back in full force. We kind of moved away from that, it felt like, in the 80s and 90s, but it's back.
Yeah, full effect,
Full effect, yes, and I have, people like my friends who can't believe that their daughters, all they want to do is wear pink and wear princess crowns when they're, tried to bring them up as to be very balanced.
You go to a Toys R Us store on Broadway, and that's all you see is really the blue section and the pink section. Yeah,
it's amazing, and in fact, that does affect our students. There are so many students, regardless of their sexual orientation. So regardless if they identify as LGBT or if they identify as straight, they just don't fit into that. I mean, we've all had experiences where we've wanted to go outside of what's been prescribed for us. So indeed, there is still that. Despite being 2012 and being in a country that's provided a lot of legal rights for LGBT people, we're still facing those rigid, boxes that they're trying to fit students into. So our program's really good at bringing up that discussion. But really, the way we do it is we let students ask those questions to each other. We provide the forum and we provide the film as a bit of a jumping point to start the conversation. But really, it's the students that are on it. They make the links themselves. And to the second point, the way we've been successful is, of course, by making strong partnerships with people who support us, and that would be everything from the BCTF has been a big ally of ours, a big supporter of our program, and I think recognizes that a lot of teachers know that they want to talk about LGBT issues, but they're not quite sure how, and for most of them, it's they want to be able to treat the subject matter properly, and so they tend to call on a program like Out in Schools to sort of fill that curriculum gap, and also to be an outsider community group that's able to kind of talk to the subject matter with more, I think, with more professionalism or with more accurately, let's say. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have made very strong relationships with various school boards. The Vancouver School Board's been a big supporter of our organization since the get-go. But of course, that extends beyond Vancouver into some of the suburban school districts, Burnaby, Surrey. Lots of great support there, and of course out into rural BC, whether it's on Vancouver Island or in the Okanagan or even up as far north as Prince George. We're very conscious of maintaining those good relationships with school districts, and we've got a pretty good reputation now. So, those school districts, those teachers, those educators, the superintendents, you name it, whoever's involved in sort of the administrative capacity at the district level, they know about us, and they know that they can rely on our facilitators. They know we deliver a consistent program that doesn't have any surprises in it. So that's, when you're dealing with topics that I think in some areas or with some people are still considered somewhat taboo, let's say, mm-hmm. It's good to have an organization that you can rely on, that is not going to kind of go off the rails in a potential conversation with students or teachers.
Yeah. Now, the kids face a lot of pressures in the schools, and there's a lot of bullying and harassment that goes on, not just around kind of whether a student is sufficiently straight, or there's racism and there's other forms of oppression. How have you witnessed? Because you're actually, I guess, going into a lot of these schools. How have you witnessed how your program with Out in Schools has kind of helped contribute to a broader awakening and awareness and maybe defense for the students who are facing other types of oppression as well?
Yeah, we can really measure that tangibly now. I think since we've been running, as I said, since 2004, we've seen a whole kind of generation go through school. So from grade 8 through to graduation, and kind of the next group comes in, and now we're able to really start to measure the impact we're making, which is a difficult thing to do sometimes when you're dealing with conversationals. It's not being test scores, let's say. So first of all, a huge intersectionality around racism, ageism, sexism, gender issues, and homophobia. So that's often, in the multicultural classrooms that are the reality of all Canadian cities, but especially the Lower Mainland, students really start to make those direct links between discrimination based on age, race, or religion, and discrimination based on sexual orientation. So that's often a real inroad to the conversation. How are we discriminated against? We'll show films that show all sorts of forms of discrimination, and what we're hearing from students, I think the most consistent feedback we get, and we do ask students to provide feedback following our workshops, is that they really appreciate the opportunity. And this is straight students and the gay, lesbian, bi, and transgender students. They really appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations in a professional, a mature setting. It's not happening in a derogatory sense in the cafeteria or on the schoolyard. It's students talking to students with the help of our facilitators. And we're getting all sorts of responses. Sometimes they come in the form of text messages. Sometimes they come as Facebook posts. And sometimes there's simple emails or even just conversations that some students might have with us following our presentations that talk about their very personal stories about being bullied or being discriminated against. And there's always just this genuine appreciation that we've showed up and we've delivered our workshop, and that there's somebody out there that is speaking on these issues. And
you mentioned how kids are communicating. I've seen on your website some really great videos that kids have made on issues. And I'm wondering, we're just running out of time now.
Sure.
What other programs do you have? And I understand you're launching a new national program. Maybe you can just give our listeners a bit of information on that.
Sure. Well, so the videos on our website at outinschools.com are some of the videos of our Rise Against Homophobia youth short video contest. It was a contest we actually started 4 years ago with the VSB, the school board, and basically getting students to create their own 30 to 60 second long short videos, public service announcements that that stand up against homophobia in their schools, and it was so successful that we've actually received funding to take this one initiative national this year. So look for videos to be submitted not only from BC students, from students in places like Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax, and of course up north and all across the country. And we'll be rolling that out at the end of this month and into March. And we're hoping to just get coast-to-coast engagement of peer-to-peer messaging on anti-homophobia issues. It's that peer-to-peer component that's been the most effective for us at engaging young people.
Sorry, my mic was off there for a sec.
No problem.
I think that's really a strategic use of appropriate tools, appropriate technology, as we say. Relying on that peer-to-peer, because you're right, it is certainly most effective and better than adults coming in or in other strategies. So kudos for that work. Any quick parting comment before we go?
Yeah, I would encourage people, as I said, to visit the website at outinschools.com. As we run all these other programs, of course, our core programming is our high school presentations. We're taking bookings right now if you're an educator or a student or a parent that would like to see us in your school. Get on our website and you can contact us to book us. And we're taking bookings now through till the end of June.
Fantastic. Ross, it's been great talking with you this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me this morning.
Okay. Good. Have a good day.
You too.
We've been speaking with Ross Johnstone, the Director of Education for Out in Schools, and that's an organization that uses film and media to educate students about homophobia, racism, and other forms of oppression. And this is 7:43, listening to the W2 Morning Radio Project. I'm your